In the quiet suburbs of a Midwestern town, where life moves at a slower pace and everyone seems to know each other, there lived a pair of identical twins who would eventually find themselves at the heart of a story that blurred the lines between loyalty, justice, and identity. Their names were Michael and Matthew Carter. From birth, they were inseparable, not just because of their mirrored appearances, but because of a bond so deep that it defied logic. What one felt, the other seemed to mirror. It was the kind of connection that fascinated everyone around them. Friends would joke that if Michael stubbed his toe, Matthew would limp. But what started as playful anecdotes would eventually evolve into a chilling true story of sacrifice, deception, and one brother's unimaginable decision to take the fall for a crime he didn't commit. Growing up, the Carters were raised in a modest home by hardworking parents. Their father, a construction worker, instilled discipline, while their mother, a school teacher, encouraged their intellectual pursuits. Both boys excelled in academics, sports, and were adored by their community. They shared everything: clothes, friends, even dreams of becoming lawyers someday. Despite their similarities, subtle differences existed. Michael was the more charismatic of the two, quick with a joke and always the center of attention. Matthew, quieter and more introspective, often stood a step behind, content to let his brother shine. But there was never envy, only pride. They loved each other deeply. As they entered adulthood, their paths remained closely aligned. Both went to the same college, majored in criminal justice, and even dated girls from the same social circle. But Michael began to stray. The same charm that had once won hearts and opened doors started to mask a darker side. He began gambling heavily, racking up debts, and eventually found himself entangled with the wrong crowd, people who didn't take kindly to late payments. Matthew noticed the change but attributed it to stress, always giving his brother the benefit of the doubt. After all, they had shared a crib. A few missteps weren't enough to undo a lifetime of loyalty. The breaking point came one rainy October night. A wealthy businessman named Alan Broderick was found murdered in his downtown office, stabbed multiple times in what authorities described as a crime of passion. Surveillance footage from a nearby building caught a blurry image of a man entering the office around the estimated time of death. The man looked eerily familiar: tall, athletic build, wearing a leather jacket. The footage wasn't crystal clear, but for anyone who knew Michael or Matthew, the resemblance was undeniable. Police began tracing leads, and within days, Michael was arrested. His fingerprints had been found on the victim's desk. Witnesses claimed to have seen him arguing with Broderick weeks before. The evidence wasn't ironclad, but it was enough to warrant prosecution. Matthew was in shock. He couldn't believe his brother could be capable of such violence. Michael maintained his innocence, insisting he'd never even met Broderick. Yet, the mounting evidence said otherwise. As the trial approached, things took an unexpected turn. 1 week before jury selection, Matthew approached the police with a stunning confession. He claimed responsibility for the murder. He described the crime scene in vivid detail, details only the killer would know. He even produced a bloody knife he said he had hidden in a storage unit across town. The confession sent shockwaves through the community. Why would Matthew, the quiet, studious brother, do such a thing? The prosecution was stunned. Their entire case had centered around Michael. Now, with Matthew's confession and the discovery of the murder weapon bearing his fingerprints, everything changed. Charges against Michael were dropped. Matthew was arrested, tried, and convicted of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison. The courtroom was silent the day the verdict was read. Michael wept. Their parents were inconsolable. The town was left confused, trying to reconcile the quiet twins' shocking confession with the reality they had known for decades. Behind bars, Matthew adjusted quickly. He kept to himself, read voraciously, and rarely spoke of the outside world. To his fellow inmates, he was just another convict. But to those who knew the Carter twins, something didn't sit right. Michael, now free, seemed a shadow of his former self. He stopped working, avoided the public, and spiraled into depression. Rumors began circulating. Some said he was haunted by guilt. Others whispered that Matthew had taken the fall deliberately, that he had confessed to protect his brother. Years passed. Then, a twist nobody saw coming emerged. A prison psychologist named Dr. Elaine Morris began working with Matthew. She found him intelligent, articulate, and oddly at peace. One day, during a routine session, Matthew made a cryptic comment. Sometimes, love means dying for someone while still being alive. Dr. Morris pressed further, but Matthew refused to elaborate. Intrigued, she began researching the case. She dug through court records, police reports, and trial transcripts. What she found troubled her. There were inconsistencies, small ones, but enough to raise doubts. Fingerprint analysis had been rushed. The surveillance footage never definitively identified Matthew. The confession, while detailed, had never been corroborated by DNA evidence. And then there was the knife. It bore Matthew's fingerprints, but none of the victim's blood. Dr. Morris contacted a legal nonprofit specializing in wrongful convictions. A new investigation was launched. Over the next year, private investigators uncovered evidence that Michael had indeed been in Broderick's office that night. A former girlfriend came forward, admitting Michael had confessed the murder to her during a drunken breakdown. She had remained silent out of fear. Financial records revealed Broderick had been threatening to expose Michael's gambling debts, possibly triggering the fatal confrontation. But the most damning piece came from an old voicemail Michael had left for his brother the night of the murder. In it, he cried, apologized, and said, "I didn't mean to, Matt. I messed up. I don't know what to do." Armed with this new evidence, the legal team filed for a retrial. Matthew remained silent through the process, neither confirming nor denying the truth. During the hearing, his attorney argued that the original confession was coerced, that Matthew, desperate to save his brother, had fabricated the story. The judge, visibly disturbed by the revelations, vacated Matthew's conviction. After 12 years in prison, he was released. The courtroom was packed, but Michael wasn't there. He had disappeared weeks earlier. His car was found abandoned near a lake. No body was recovered. Matthew returned home to a hero's welcome, but the scars ran deep. He had lost over a decade of his life. His parents had both passed while he was behind bars. The town that once revered the Carter twins now looked at him with a mix of sympathy and disbelief. Why would someone make such a sacrifice? When asked by reporters, Matthew simply said, "Because he was my brother." That was the only explanation he ever gave. The story of the Carter twins became a national sensation. It raised questions about identity, loyalty, and the flaws in the justice system. Experts debated the ethics of Matthew's actions. Some called it noble. Others called it criminal. Could a society function if people were allowed to trade places in the face of justice? The case became a textbook example in law schools and a cautionary tale in criminology classes. But beyond the academic intrigue lay the raw, human reality of two brothers, one who lost his way, and another who tried to save him at the cost of his own freedom. In the end. The story of Michael and Matthew Carter is not just a tale of crime and punishment. It's a story of love so profound it defied law, logic, and self-preservation. It forces us to ask ourselves, what would we do for the ones we love? Would we lie? Would we suffer? Would we give up everything, even our freedom, to protect them? For Matthew Carter, the answer was yes. He bore the weight of another man's crime, lived another man's punishment, and emerged not as a victim, but as a testament to the complexity of human loyalty. And perhaps, in a world so often obsessed with justice, his story reminds us that sometimes, the heart makes decisions the mind could never understand.